Hello, Haiku is back. I'm gonna go through a deck tech for this Rakdos Madness deck. Um, the meta for best of three is slightly different from best of one, but I've been liking this enough that I think I'm going to continue to play it. So I really enjoyed it during the Midweek Magic Historic Pauper, and so I'm going to take it in the Swiss tournament today and see how it does. I think red black is probably the premier color combination. I think red is the strongest color in Historic Pauper, and I think red black gives access to a lot of tools that are fairly strong. And so I like playing with the strongest colors. I like playing with the strongest deck. So I think this is going to be a contender. So how have I adjusted the deck for best of three? So the biggest thing is that there's no hand smoother in best of three. So I'm playing a lot more lands. So I'm playing full 22 lands in this deck. It does kind of seem a lot for an aggro deck, especially an aggro deck that can filter, but that filtering also allows you to discard extra lands. So one thing that I was finding with the deck is that it has a lot of card advantage, a lot of very efficient threats. The area that it kind of runs into is if it gets into, it doesn't hit its land drop every turn for the first couple turns, because then it can't deploy its threats and its removal and its draw cards efficiently. And, it's an aggro deck, so if it falls behind early, it's tough for this deck to come back, although it's not as hard as you may think. So the card that I kind of cut to make room for this was the 2-mana Madness creature, the Warrior. I think the Madness cards that you want are all the premier ones are the 1-mana ones. And then this one is really nice because when you Madness, quote unquote, when you discard it, I should say, when you discard it, you don't have to pay the mana that turn. So it's kind of a nice, basically a 0-mana discard outlet, or discard target, I guess is the more appropriate term. Yeah, so I'm playing the 2 premier Madness cards in the format, and then I'm playing Terminal Agony as a 4 of. I only am playing 9 removal spells, and I have a lot of ground creatures that are small, so I want to be able to get in. So that's why I'm playing the full 4 of Terminal Agonies and much more removal in the board. For my threats, I guess I should divide the deck up into kind of enablers, efficient threats, and let's see, and then Madness cards. And then this is just the removal. So cards that I want to discard are all of these. So I have my enablers, Faithless Looting, Vampire's Kiss, and Scrapwork Mutt, and then the blood token from Voldaren Epicure also counts. So these kind of do double duty. These 7 cards do double duty as far as enabling Madness. And then Okiba Reckoner Raid is the premier black 1-drop in Historic Pauper. And then Blast-Runner, I've been pretty impressed with. So one nice thing about this deck is all the blood tokens. So you have 6 things that create blood tokens, and then you have the 8 fetch lands that trigger your Blast-Runner. And that generally is enough. Again, it's a 1-drop, so you're not thinking that it's going to get in for 18 points of damage. But if this gets in for 3 and then hits for 1 and eats a removal spell or trades with the creature, it's done its job. And the nice part is when it does tend to trade, it tends to trade up in a mana cost for the creature, or it sucks up a blocker because they have to throw 2 blockers in front of it, and then allows other cards to get in. And then both of these cards being your 1-drops that both have menace work pretty well, where the opponent is really it's really hard for the opponent to turn the corner against a menace creature, because they have to keep 2 creatures back, but then if you have 1 removal spell, then they can't even block anyways. So it makes it very difficult choices for the opponents. So these being the threats seems to work out well. Voldaren Epicure, dealing the 1 damage, so it's like a pseudo haste that's unblockable, works really well with the Okiba Reckoner raid, as well as the Vampire's Kiss and Fiery Temper. So a lot of burn that can go face incidentally. So you get in with some damage early on, and then that kind of burn can finish off the creatures. And then Scrapwork Mutt. I've been going back and forth on if I like more Vampire's Kiss or Scrapwork Mutt. Now, after cutting the other 2-mana Madness card, I think you want to play more Scrapwork Mutts, but I'm still unsure, so that's why it's a 2-3 instead of a 4-1 split. The downside of Scrapwork Mutt is it costs 2 mana the turn that you want to use the Madness, where Vampire's Kiss, you can cast 2 mana, but then after that, first of all, it gives you 2 blood tokens, so it's a double discard outlet, where this one gives you 2 discard outlets over, once it dies, or the second one once it dies. But this one being blood tokens means that you can cast it on turn 2, and then on turn 3 you can sack the blood token and get your Madness on. And so being only 1 mana to initiate Madness is much better than the 2 mana. But I think with 9 removal spells, I think you actually want the threat. There is a little bit of weakness to the what is it called? In the festivities, but it's only 7 cards, and Scrapwork Mutt comes back from the graveyard, so I'm not too fuffed about losing on the Scrapwork Mutt and a Voldaren Epicure and a Wrath. So I just have to be careful about how many of these I deploy at once. But I think in general you just kind of jam, and yeah, they might 3-for-1 you or whatever, but you've gotten other sorts of value from these creatures that it's okay to kind of run them out into a potential Wrath. And then your Madness cards. So as I said before, Fiery Temper and Kitchen Imp are the premier Madness cards of the format. A 2/2 Flying Haste is just so bonkers for 1 mana, and then basically a Lightning Bolt. So we don't have access to Lightning Bolt on Arena at Pauper. It was printed at a rare, so per our historic Pauper rules, we don't allow it, which is, I think, a good thing. The format, like I said at the beginning of this video, the color that's dominating is red, and so giving it access to Lightning Bolt would just, again, push that way into the favor of red being the best color. So very efficient removal spell and a very efficient threat, and then the great part about this one is it can go face, where our other red removal spells can't go face. Then, as I alluded to before, I swapped this for my 2-mana Madness creature, so I think the removal is more important. The big thing that you're scared of is like lifelink creatures, and then it's nice too that it's it's a Madness card, so it's like a free discard, and it kind of clears the way for your creatures. And again, hitting any creature in the format that you can target is pretty nice. Then First-Sphere. So as alluded before, you're not really planning on casting this. I did up the land count to 22, but if I get up to the full 6 mana, it can happen. But anyway, the ideal, or the reason why this is in the deck is to discard to the Scrapwork Mutt or to the Vampire's Kiss, or Faithless Looting when you don't have enough mana to cast another Madness card. So generally what happens is you Faithless Looting into 1 Madness card and discard the Gargantua. So then you only have, the 1 extra mana to cast one of these, but then you also cast you have the First-Sphere in the yard. And so basically this is a 5 mana, a 3 mana, it's a, what is it called? Ball Lightning card, but it draws you a card when it comes into play from the graveyard. So it's very, very, very much better than Ball Lightning, but it doesn't have trample. So you do like the removal spells to clear the way for it, or just try to pick a turn to use it when the opponent doesn't have blockers, or they're really hesitant to throw their really critical creature in front of the Gargantua just to gain 5 life. And then just as a conceit to hexproof, I really dislike that it's in the meta that you have to play these random kind of one-ofs that aren't like kind of so in this tight plan. It's just like an outlier that sticks out. But I think the card is good enough that you want to play it. Since I've cut the Madness guy, the only way to kind of trigger it is with the Gargantua. It's whatever. The gain 4 life rarely comes up. It's more just to sacrifice a creature. But the fact that it can potentially gain 4 life is sometimes nice. In the sideboard, again, a big reason why I like this deck is the sideboard options. So I think this is a really good card against any deck that are running a lot of 1 toughness creatures. We've had a pretty spirited discussion talking about fairies in our Discord. So again, shout out to our Discord. The link is down below. Come by and check it out. But basically, I play a lot of ninja / fairies. I think it's going to be called fairies from now on, since we got so many fairies spoiled in Wilds of Eldraine. But yeah, I think for the for 1 toughness creatures, you want to be casting your removal at 1 mana. So End the Festivities is fine. I like this because obviously it's reusable when removal, and you can also throw it on some of your creatures to get in for additional damage. The only creatures that you can't throw it on are the Epicure and the Mutt, but everything else you can throw it on. And then I'm playing the full 4 Frostbites. I think kind of, as I alluded to before, the reason for playing a lot of removal is I think this deck really struggles with a lifelinker, especially a lifelinker in the air. So basically, any kind of white deck that's looking to play Hailor's Hawk and then like load it up with artifacts and enchantments, I think an efficient removal spell is really what you want. It's also really good against ninjas. And I like it more than End the Festivities because the ninja deck has enough 2 toughness stuff that you want to hit as well. The biggest one is the unblockable Merfolk, the 1/2. 2 relics to deal with graveyard decks. I think this is enough for this deck, which has the Faithless Looting, all of the Faithless Looting blood tokens to cycle through its deck, so it can generally find relics in time. You don't like necessarily need this to beat a graveyard deck. You can kind of play a fair game, but I think keeping 2 is worth it. 2 are worthy of the sideboard slots. Then this is the big addition that I think is going to get more and more popular. I'm currently dedicating 2 slots for this. I think you potentially want to do even more. So it's a very flexible card where both sides are very, very relevant. So first off, being 2 mana is pretty good, for the flexibility. So you basically get a better Abrade or a better End of the Festivities, or not End of the Festivities, worse End of the Festivities, but that sort of effect. So the Exile artifact is really good against the bridge decks that kind of abuse Cleansing Wildfire and bridges. I think that's where it really shines. It also deals double damage against affinity decks. So I think this is really good. And then the 1 damage also works against weenie decks. So what I found is you generally don't need the absolute power of End the Festivities to really clean up a deck that's relying on 1 toughness creatures. I think you have this as repeatable removal versus them. You have some Frostbites, and so the goal is to more remove their weenies before they do a lot of damage. So like say a good example is a deck playing 8 mana elves. So the 4 Elvish Mystics and the 4 Llanowar Elves. You really want to be able to kill those early on, and instead of trying to get value by wiping up more later on. So that's why I'm playing this card. Then I'm sticking with the plan of Alms of the Vein in the sideboard. So I think I have a little bit of life gain between Okiba Reckoner Raid and Vampire's Kiss. And in the very rare scenario, which again, very, very rare, Undercity's Embrace. And I also have these 8 lands that gain me 1 life when they sack. I think this is enough to get through an aggro mirror and swing the race in my favor. Because again, this deck is also a very fast deck. So I think it can win aggro fight. But then if you really, really want to solidify it, which I do, you have access to this. So what I've decided to do is play a more standard, value cards that affect the board deck, and then play this in the sideboard, because obviously it doesn't affect the board, but it gains some critical life, and obviously it works with my plan of madnessing stuff. So I like the... I don't like to play main deck. So then if I'm going to put it in my sideboard, I really want to be able to draw it in the matchups where I really want it. And so that's why I'm playing the full 4. This is the sideboard plan, though, which I'm not as sure about. But we shall see. I think it's a reasonable plan. And then, again, a conceit to the hexproof decks. The reason why I'm using Undercity's Embrace rather than enchantment removal is because you can just focus on removing Ethereal Armor, because that's the biggest threat from those decks. The reason why I like this card is because I have removal. I'll play probably the full 4 Fire Tempers no matter what against that deck, and so then I could use the Fire Tempers to clear out their incidental creatures that they get when they cast their auras and stuff that make edict effects worse. So then you leave them only with their hexproof creature, and then cause them to edict it away. So in decks where you don't have a lot of other removal that you're going to be keeping in against them, then yes, you probably want to just focus on removing Ethereal Armor rather than removing the whole creature. But since I have that removal and I need to be beating it down and stuff, I think it's more relevant to get the creature out of the deck, or out of the battle, off the battlefield. The other nice part about this is this plays really well against white and green protection spells. So Loren's Escape, Karamicha's Blessing in white, and then Snakeskin Veil in green, and then it also works well against the Tolarian Terror, because you don't have to pay the ward cost. So, edict effects dodging that kind of protection spell is also pretty relevant in the meta. So that's why I am playing 3 between side and main. I've almost convinced myself that maybe I should cut 1 Alms of the Vein and play the 4th Undercity's Embrace, just to really not lose to that kind of deck. Yeah, I think I'm going to make that last minute change. All right. But I kind of like that there's so many 4-ups. I don't want to spend my wild card on the last Faithless Looting to balance this out. But anyway, so I think the deck shows that, there are, I think it shows, and I guess it's more where I've come down on the deck is that these are the cards you want to be playing with, and you want to draw them every game in as many copies as you can. And so I think when you see a deck with a lot of 4-ofs, that's a sign that really the cards are very strong and very good in a lot of situations where you're not really worried about drawing multiples and stuff like that. And same with the sideboard. Having kind of a more focused sideboard plan, I think, is really gonna help me today. Let's see. The only other thing is I have cut off of my Duress and Divest. So Duress was a possible card that I was considering playing against Control, But I think the Gargantua really punishes control decks. The fact that Unearth can't be countered really gives this deck legs, and obviously Madness itself is like a kind of a card advantage and a mana saving mechanic that really punishes control decks by playing multiple spells per turn. And then Divest works really well against creature value decks. So creature decks that are going to be playing, there's green and blue cards that are green and blue creatures that when they ATB they draw a card, and that kind of strategy is a little bit concerning for this kind of deck. The way around it is basically kind of Kitchen Imp, remove their flyers, and then kind of rely on Madness Menace to get through before the opponent has sufficient blockers, and kind of finish them off before they stabilize. So I think that would be the weakness of the deck. And I think that's where, having efficient removal, so you can remove their value creature and continue cracking in and developing your board even more, is going to pay off. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'd rather have this plan of, yes, they get their value when they ETB, but then I get rid of their creature and clear the board for my attackers, rather than trying to divest and take their value creature before they cast it. Yeah, that was the kind of the plan for the deck. So obviously, if the deck can stabilize and get a couple blockers in, and I don't have my removal, then yes, they will grind this deck down. This deck does have a lot of card advantage, but not quite enough to keep up with a deck dropping 3/3s that draw a card, and 4/4s that draw a card, and 2/2s that draw 2 cards in Muldrifter. So I think that's it for the deck tech. I think this is one of the solid choices in the meta. Yeah, so stay tuned for the gameplay of the tournament.